So here's what's interesting. You and I are, a lot of these people in the media, and I'd like to say, first and foremost, I unfortunately am part of the media, though I don't consider myself anything more than America's honesty broker. But nonetheless, you and I have supported Harbaugh. He's a little disappointing to us, but he's won 72% of his games. Lloyd Carr won like 74%.
Yeah, right around there.
Schembechler, 77, 78. But it's interesting. I said to you this morning, I said, okay, he's 2-12 against top 10 teams.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's not great. And he can't beat Ohio State. Whatever. I said, but he's 3-3 against Michigan State. I said, if you just took those three and he was 6-0 against Michigan State, he'd have something to grab onto. And you said, oh, no. I'm going to distill it down to a game.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is fascinating. Take the floor.
I think that with Harbaugh, and this is not an excuse, because I'll be the first one to tell you that, like, it's been under what I think we expected. I thought at this point they would be on more equal footing with Ohio State. Okay, so I believe that Jim has underperformed at Michigan.
I do too. Fair.
To be fair, right. Now, having said that, you can distill down the quote-unquote disappointment of Jim at Michigan to 2 snaps of the football, maybe even 1 snap of the football. Not year, not game, snap of the football.
This is fascinating.
If you go back to the punt that turned into a fumble, that turned into a touchdown for Michigan State in the last, 5 seconds of the game, in that year, if they just kick the ball away and win the game, they win the division and go to the Big Ten championship, likely win the championship and go to the playoff.
He would have a playoff.
He would have a playoff berth, a Big Ten championship, and he would be not even just 6-0, 4-2 against Michigan State. You can literally boil it down. Now, if you go one more snap of the football the same year in which he got I think still, and a lot of people agree with me, a really bad spot against Ohio State. I've told this to Urban Meyer right to his face.
A terrible spot. Everybody except Buckeyes knows they got jobbed on that spot.
It's a 4th down play.
Yes.
For whatever reason, the other network did not have a camera down the line. I still have no idea how that happens in a game that big with the amount of equipment that they have. But J.T. Barrett, in my mind, was probably short of that 4th down. If that is called correctly, Michigan not only beats Ohio State, but again, win the division, likely win the Big Ten, and go to the playoff. So 2 snaps of the football would completely change the narrative. And yet, I will stand by what I said to begin this, which is Jim has underperformed to the point of what I thought he was going to do. We sat on the desk together. We did a pregame show before the Thursday night game, his first of his career at Michigan as a head coach.
Yeah.
They were about to play Utah, Kyle Whittingham's Utah team. And we sat on the desk, and the conversation was, I remember it vividly, how long until Michigan's a top 10 team? And I thought to myself, they could probably do it sometime this year, maybe next. And you thought I was crazy. You were like, what? They did it that year. They got into that mode. They were winning 10 games. The next year, they were winning 10 games. He has done a lot of really good things, returned Michigan to a place where they can talk about things at the upper echelon, which they could not do under Rich Rod or Brady Hoke. But having said that, it really boils down to the games against Michigan State. And that's why this week is so fascinating, is because here he is again, undefeated, and yet it feels like the fan base is ready for the shoe to drop in Michigan, whereas at Michigan State, they are just wildly excited about what Mel has built in such a short time.
Think about this. If he wins this weekend, and they're favored, and I think they will close, they'll win close. I don't think Michigan's offense is built to take advantage of Michigan State's weakness, which is their secondary. So I think it'll be a close game, but Michigan will win. But it's interesting. If he won this weekend, if you just change that snap, he is then 5-2 against Michigan State. He is go to a playoff. He wins a conference championship.
It's just totally different. It's totally different.
We say this all the time. Life is there have been situationally. I mean,
the Brady Tuck rule. I mean, you go back to just individual snaps of the football throughout history, and it changes everything.
Is 2 plays from a second national title and a second Super Bowl.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean an inch.
That's right.
Lendale White's an inch shy, or Vince Young never gets that ball back.
Well, and he should have learned his lesson out of the first one, is that the best player on the planet in college football wasn't on the field on that 4th down play against Texas. Reggie Bush wasn't on. Whether you give it to him or not, he's not on the field to influence the defense. And Marshawn Lynch doesn't touch the ball on that goal line snap. He should have learned his lesson out of that college game.
Let me throw this at you. You set 44 school records as Colorado's starting. You did. You set 44. Now, at that point, it was an intramural program. But nonetheless,
that's right. That's right.
It was a smaller program.
We used to run the option, Colin. That's how you set records.
Okay, but it was funny. I watched Kenny Pickett this weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's the Pitt quarterback. Now, he's kind of a beer-drinking, good-looking kid, easy thrower.
Yes.
He's been there forever. I swear to God, he's there for the hot lunch program. He's been there for like 12 years. I watched him, and I wanted to watch him against Clemson because Clemson's a little down.
But their defense is still good.
Their defense is still good, but I watched him. What is your interpretation of what he becomes? What do you see with him? Because he is an easy thrower.
I see a lot of, now different stylistically, but I see a lot of these hyper-veteran college quarterbacks that end up figuring it out late in their college career and become really good NFL quarterbacks. Guys like Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow. There was one on Mac Jones. That's kind of, again, different stylistically than a lot of those guys, but he is making throws that he just didn't. And this speaks to the element of allowing young quarterbacks, young football players to grow and to evolve.
You know, it's just funny. As I watched him, I thought to myself, oh, yeah, he throws an NFL ball.
Right.
He's got the size. It looks like an NFL quarterback. And Pitt doesn't have great players, although they're playing pretty good football. But it wasn't because I watched him. I mean, he's mobile enough. He's got a Daniel Jones. He's mobile enough. He'll probably run a 4.75, 4.8. He's mobile enough.
But that's the mold I see him in. And we've seen this a lot over the last few years. Guys that are veteran college quarterbacks that figure it out late.
Yeah, it's very interesting because he's when I watched him, I really sat down for an hour. I'm watching Kenny Pickett, and I thought, okay, he's an NFL quarterback. I just don't know if he's a backup or a starter.
So here's what's great about guys like Kenny Pickett or Mac Jones or Joe Burrow or Baker or these guys is that they can stick around the college game long enough to actually learn football and not just rely on their talent. And in a lot of these cases, they're not quite physically gifted enough just to rely on that and be a great player like Justin Fields or a Trevor Lawrence early. So they've got to figure out the schematics of the game. They've got to get in deep with the why, not just the how of how to be successful on the football field. And because of that, they can go and they can translate that into success earlier in their pro career. I think Kenny's going to get a shot. He probably has played himself into the first round, maybe even high into the first round. Yeah. And he's going to be another one of these stories. It's Joe Burrow, it's Mac Jones, now it's going to be Kenny Pickett.
You know what I thought? Because he's not flashy, you know what I thought? He's going to go about 12th to 15th. What does that mean? Like Mac Jones? Pretty good football team.
A decent football team, that's where you want to be drafted.
Yeah, I thought this is the kind of guy that drops to 16 and ends up going to a team like that's kind of ready to go. That's kind of got pieces. Okay, so I'm going to throw a couple things out there. This is very interesting because of my labyrinth of sources in the industry. I heard that James Franklin at Penn State, who had a brutal loss against Illinois, not great, he changed agents.
In the summer.
Okay, in the summer. Okay. My sources were late, apparently. The point is this. I had two people text me, and they're like, oh, you can't hire him for the USC job after that. And I'm like, oh, give me a break. People lose. I mean, Pete Carroll lost to Oregon State up in Corvallis. What is the temperature on James Franklin, Penn State, USC today, in your opinion?
I have heard that the temperature is quite warm for him, both at USC and potentially at LSU. Because of his success in the SEC footprint when he took a Vanderbilt program that was nothing and ended up being a very good to strong program in the SEC. I know that he's not going to want to talk about that, and he talks about not being distracted, although this week in his press conference preparing for Ohio State, he said, I'm just trying to get ready for Illinois in the big house, which, of course, you're getting ready for the Buckeyes in the horseshoe. But nevertheless, I don't think that the agent thing is a big deal. I think that this was blown out of proportion in terms of when it was reported. To what I believe is that he changed this agent in the summer, and it was unrelated to all of these coaching changes before USC or LSU even came up. Now, he's going to be on a short list of 3 to 4 on both of these lists. And so you're going to have to start diving in and looking under the microscope. Where does he want to be? Does he want to leave potentially and go to try it at one of these other programs? Does he feel like the ceiling has been hit at Penn State? I've been told that Matt Rule is not all the way in on the NFL moving forward, and that he could potentially come back down to any number of these jobs. So
let's segue to the Mike Tomlin said, forget it, I'm not going to USC.
What a good answer. That was the
best. But it does lead to this, and Joy may have said, somebody said this to me, and I can't remember who it was. They said, Mike Tomlin made it look like a small job, like it's Cal State Fullerton baseball. And it was like, to me, is USC unrealistic? USC's talking Tomlin, and they're going to call McVay, and then I think to myself, shouldn't they just go get a college coach? I mean, are they going too big? Do you think USC, Tomlin saying that, his opinion is a realistic opinion, like college football at the Pac-12, this is not the job it used to be?
I'll be the first one to say, like, if I had a conversation with Mike Bone, the athletic director at USC today, I would tell him, swing as big as you possibly can. Now, some of those might be out of your range. I think Mike Tomlin's probably one of those because of the job that he has, right? He's at an organization that will give you patience, that will be real. They look at you with clear eyes. They don't have unrealistic expectations year to year. It's an organization that has had 3 coaches over the course of basically 2 generations. Yeah. So I think that it's more about the job that he has, and he articulated that beautifully. I love Mike Tomlin and his answer to that question. Having said that, though, USC should swing as big as they possibly can. Now, I think it has more to do with fit and style than it does with anything else. They need somebody that understands how to be big and yet also small enough to allow his own players to be stars, because that's how you have success at USC.
That feels like James Franklin to me.
Could be.
That's what it feels like to me.
It could be. I don't think it sounds like Luke Fickell.
No.
I think Luke Fickell fits really well at, let's just say, for sake of argument, these jobs pop open. I'm not saying that they will. Let's say, for sake of argument, Michigan State or Penn State or, a Big Ten job. Luke Fickell is kind of your man at that point.
Yes.
Matt Campbell is your man. But I don't know if those two guys are cut out or cut from the cloth that would succeed at USC, because you need that NFL-style DNA. And what I mean by that is that you've got to be comfortable enough in your own skin for your quarterback to be a bigger star than you are. And that's the type of coach that you need at USC.
Okay, let's go to Klatt's top 10. Now, before I see it, I hope you don't have Cincinnati up there.
I do not. You might be happy where I have them. I've got Cincinnati at number 8.
Thank you. Finally, I gotta. I'm usually I feel like this is almost teacher-student, but in this instance, you are really making me very happy, because
here's the reason behind Cincinnati.
This is exactly where they should be.
The reason behind Cincinnati, I love what they're doing, but the problem is that I'm a big conference snob. All right?
Yeah.
I'm just unapologetically so. It's much tougher to go through even a Pac-12 or even ACC schedule than it is to go through the Group of 5 schedule like Cincinnati is. So the burden of proof is on you. It's not enough to just win. So when you do what you did against Navy, albeit against a triple option, albeit on the road, you can't be sitting there having to get an interception after they got an onside kick in a one-possession game. I'm sorry, that's not afforded you. I also dropped Oklahoma because you can't go to Kansas and be in a dogfight with Kansas like they were in that game. That's why I moved it around. Yeah. And by the way, people are like, oh, you can't believe you did what you did with Ohio State. There is a clear mark between number 3 and everybody else. I've got Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama.
I totally agree.
And I toyed with who's better, Alabama, Ohio State. I'm not sure, and I kind of slotted it this way, and here's the reason. I've got Ohio State number 2 because in the last 4 games, their defense, which was their Achilles heel, is the number 2 scoring defense in the country behind Georgia and the number 2 yards per play defense behind Georgia. They're averaging over 50 points per game. C.J. Stroud, since he came back from that injury, he's thrown for over 300 yards, 14 touchdowns, no interceptions. Watch out for Ohio State. Sneaky C.J. Stroud might win the Heisman Trophy, and this might be the team that ends up playing the SEC champion in the national championship game.
Finally, it's nothing against No, I mean, listen. A lot of these college football guys, they feel guilty.
Well, I did feel guilty about that. I want
moving
the game.
Cincinnati to 8.
The one I feel most guilty about is Oregon. I know that they're not better than Ohio State, and yet they beat them. And at the end, I will give them the benefit of the doubt because of that. They have earned the right to be ranked higher than Ohio State when push comes to shove.
They can't throw
Anthony Brown had his best game of his life, really, against UCLA last week. But Oregon scares me a little bit in a conference that's schizophrenic and anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday, except for Arizona and Colorado.
Yeah. All right, Klatt, you know what? We're going to end it right there. I thought you did your
cordial
homework assignment. You came in.
It was a homework assignment?
You handed me an apple on the teacher's desk. I really feel you delivered today. And
if we're going with academic analogies, we're going to have to talk about the plagiarism of that take from Tom Brady.
That's a good point. I just move off that one and it never happened. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.